Hello, and welcome back to the American Dream Portfolio. If you haven't yet buckled up to embark on this journey with us, please like and subscribe. Here we go. In our last video, we explained how passive income is critical to reaching for and achieving the American dream. And by the way, we would love to see your comments about what the American dream means to you and what you look forward to hearing about in future videos. Don't be surprised if we address your specific question or comment soon after you post it. But back to passive income. Remember that passive income flows into your bank account no matter how you are spending your time. That's because it is the investment that generates the income, not your hard work. It is our hope that those of you who act guided by the information we will present over the next weeks and months will experience a meaningful amount of passive income even as you watch our videos. How nice that would be. But passive income isn't a work of magic. It depends on an underlying asset to produce the income. Assets like cash, stocks, bonds, and real estate, as we discussed last time. The more assets like these that you own, the greater your passive income is likely to be. Okay, but what value of assets do you need to produce enough passive income so that you can spend your days at the cafe? Well, you will have to stick with us on that one, because it's the subject of at least one or two videos. For now, we'd like to revisit a concept we introduced you to previously, the concept of appreciation. In other words, the process whereby assets go up in value over time. We told you that some assets produce income and some assets appreciate, while some do both. What we would like to focus on at the moment is an asset that may go up in value but never generates interest, dividends, or rent. Does that sound disappointing? Well, remember that passive income can derive from appreciation alone, and this substance has been a store of increasing value for thousands of years. It is mentioned in the Bible over 400 times as having great value. Can you guess what it is? It is gold. Gold is a metal which is very pleasing to the eye and which has many special properties. One such property is that it is very stable. While iron rusts and silver tarnishes, gold is very resistant to any form of corrosion. Gold that was first pulled out of the ground 2,000 years ago looks just as pleasing today. And while gold is relatively difficult to locate and extract, it is not too difficult, making it possible to collect a sufficient quantity of gold for economic purposes. And so, while we are building the American Dream portfolio, we will consider gold as having a possible place in that portfolio because of its tendency to appreciate, even though it generates no income. Just how much has gold appreciated over time? Well, let's put it this way. In 1971, when US President Richard Nixon decoupled gold from the dollar so that gold could begin trading freely based on supply and demand, 1 ounce of gold would have been worth about 95 gallons of gasoline. Today, February 2026, 1 ounce of gold will buy you approximately 1,661 gallons of gasoline. That's the power of appreciation. No interest, dividends, or rent required. Now, some of you may be thinking, why is she telling me this? I can't afford to buy gold. All I can say is, stay on this journey with us. At the American Dream portfolio, we will show you how you can take advantage of assets like gold by making small, affordable purchases. We've got you covered. There is one more important asset that does not always generate an income, and that asset is stocks. Recall in the last video we mentioned that stocks, which represent an ownership stake in a for-profit company, sometimes pay dividends, which are a share of company profits and a form of passive income. But not all stocks pay dividends. Some companies choose not to pay a dividend, preferring instead to reinvest those profits back into business operations so that the company can take advantage of growth opportunities. Other companies, especially those that are quite young, do not yet have profits and therefore have no profits to share. But whether a stock pays a dividend or not, the American Dream portfolio will look to stocks as the workhorse of our portfolio because of their potential to appreciate significantly. More than any other asset class, stocks, carefully selected and managed, will work as hard or harder for you than any other investment you can buy. Of course, much more on stocks in future videos. If you watched our last video, you may recall that we spoke about forces operating in America that can work harder for you than you do for yourself. Forces that, if given enough time, can help you achieve the American dream. What forces were we talking about? Military force? Political force? Cultural force? No, we were not referring to any of those forces, though they certainly exist. Instead, we were talking about the forces of innovation and disruptive change that are behind America's massive economic engine, the most powerful in the world. These forces are typically not featured prominently in the history books, though they have shaped world history more than any armed conflict or charismatic leader. Economist Joseph Schumpeter called these the forces of creative destruction. Let me give you an example of creative destruction from America's past. In 1903, over 120 years ago, America, Europe, and the lands beyond was a world of simple wagons, carts, and ploughs pulled by horses, mules, and oxen. Yes, the railroad had been advancing for over 50 years, but for most of the world's population, getting around on land meant walking or being pulled by an animal. What happened in 1903? In that year, a lowly mechanic named Henry Ford started his third automobile company. The first two had failed. Ford was not alone in the automobile industry. In fact, just a few years before, 57 American auto companies competed with Ford in a market that was completely new and untested. And if you think that Tesla and EVs are a recent innovation, think again. 3/4 of the 4,000 cars produced in America in 1900 ran on electricity or steam. Ford's cars ran on gasoline, which at that time was only available at the occasional hardware store or pharmacy. How did this unknown mechanic change the world more than any politician or superstar entertainer? By making the automobile, which was then seen as a rich man's plaything, into a reliable commodity that was affordable to the working man of even modest means. How did Ford do that? Through sheer genius and force of will, Ford figured out how to survive in an expanding market, not by raising his prices as everyone else was doing, but by lowering them. He set the price first, and that low price forced his engineers to innovate and cut costs so that a profit could be squeezed out of every car. With lower prices in an expanding market, sales of Ford automobiles exploded. In today's language, we would say that Ford blew away his competition. More Fords meant more paved roads, which meant more travel, which meant more communication. And when communication between people increases, knowledge is shared and progress follows. And the rest, as they say, is history. Why did I digress to tell you about Henry Ford? Because Ford and others like him are behind the creative destruction that Schumpeter talked about. Ford destroyed the world of the horse and cart, a world that had existed for thousands of years. And this is the American force that can be working to make you rich while you sip your coffee. If you let it. See you in the next video.